Welcome to this edition of Fulgor Wine Theatre, presented by Partesa for Wine. It is my great pleasure to introduce our special guest, Daniele Cernilli, widely regarded as the pioneer of Italian wine
Subtitles created by the Amara community.
Telling you is not easy. In fact, you are one of the few who is on Wikipedia. Is the one who has lyophilized your life a little bit better, considering that it is very long and very complex. So it says you were born, doesn't say when you were born, but just says that Daniele Cernilli in 1986 graduated in theoretical philosophy, discussing his thesis with Guido Calogero. He was with Stefano Bonilli, among the creators of Gambero Rosso, since its inception, that is in 1986. After collaborating with many other magazines in the sector, City Anyway, Vini e Liquori, Il Vino, Veronelli, Nautica, La Repubblica, Corriere Adriatico, retracing over the years the roles also of deputy director, coordinator, director also of the monthly Gambero Rosso and other publications always published anyway by Gambero Rosso, correct. Curator of the Guida dei Vini d'Italia since its first edition. Here we are talking about 1987 to 2011. Yes, edition of 88, but that came out in 87. Perfect. And here is the best part. To him we owe the invention of the classification of wines in glasses from 1 to 3, and the invention of the award, the invention of course of the 3 glasses award for the best wines evaluated on that guide. So the famous 3 glasses comes from your intuition. From 1999 until 2008, you were among the authors of the RadioSat thematic channel Gambero Rosso channel, and that you also directed from the end of 2008 until the beginning of 2011, when I left Gambero Rosso. That's right, because anyway, from 87 to 2011. Obviously, you've been a professional journalist since 1995, so I'm very careful. What an expression, look. Since 2006, you have published for the publisher Unaudi the volume memoir of a wine taster, which I read and recommend to everybody, in the Stile Libero series. And since 2007, an honorary member of the Italian Sommelier Association. And you've been a member. I've also seen your membership since 1979. That's right, 531. Let's say those who had the membership before me, I don't know if they are all still alive. I hope so, but I'm afraid not. You left the leadership of the Red Camber on the 14th day of January 2011. They are very accurate. Exactly. You made a transition to the Italian Sommelier Association. In 2011, you started devising what would be your endpoint today, which is first of all the website, then www.doctorwine.it. Then from 2012 to 2015, you also collaborated with SET, the supplementary weekly of Corriere della Sera. And in May 2013, you received the title of Master Taster of ONAV. That's right. Honorary. From June 2013, you were appointed consultant editor of Spirito Divino magazine, with which you still collaborate today. And then it started precisely this very great adventure, which is DoctorWine, which turned into a guide. That's right. This year is the 10th edition. The 2024, you have that. The 2023. The 2024, I have it at home. I didn't bring it to you because I was finishing reading. So, as I was saying, also, I kind of titled Riccardo Cottarella in his interview. You're kind of the good companion of wine. You've written, you've done, you've directed, you've built a little bit of everything that's about our nation in the wine world anyway. I'll start with the questions, because this is where we need to start to find out. When did you realize that wine would be part of your life by turning into the Daniele Cernilli? Ever since I was a child, I have always been passionate about geography, which is a subject most people absolutely detest. Instead, I was an enthusiast. I knew all the capitals of the world. My father was a furniture dealer, and the furniture makers very often were also winemakers. Or they would send wine gifts at Christmas anyway for the holiday season. And I remember vividly that one of his suppliers, of my father's suppliers, was a friend of a gentleman who was in the Asti area, and his name was Giacomo Bologna. And so he used to send us Giacomo Bologna's wines. Still, there was no Uccellone Brico, there was only a Barbera, a Grignolino. and I didn't expect him to even send me some dolcetto. He surprised me by sending me Barbera and Grignolino instead. It was at that moment that I realized they were distinct wines. Being someone who is passionate about geography, I discovered that wine is like a map of different flavors. All the wines were distinct from one another due to their representation of different situations and grape varieties that may have been grown in one place but not in another. This aspect of diversity in wines was something I held a strong passion for. However, the exact moment that left a lasting impression was the wine's vintage. Do you recall it? If I recall correctly, it was around the year 1975. This is partly because in that same period, Veronelli was publishing tasting notes for the magazine Epoca, featuring 4 wines per issue, each representing one of those elements. I would eagerly purchase Epoca just to read about these wines, and I managed to collect all of those articles. Unfortunately, I lost them during a move. So, I believe it was in 1975 when all of this occurred. I was 21 years old at that time, and now I am 54 years old. So already ahead. You were really very far ahead, I would say. I was way ahead, and I have to tell you that that thing there was instrumental. Because then there were the maps. As a geography buff, I could see where the different places were. And I remember some of the wines that maps of that area, that is the topographic map of where the winery was. So he anticipated a Masnaghetti. Exactly. There was just a winery there with the roads, the places, the place names, the various... And there were, what do I know? I remember the Sangiovese di Romagna. I don't remember if it was Fattoria Paradiso. It was the one from Fattoria Paradiso in the Cavalier Pezzi. That's right. That was in Bertinoro, if I'm not mistaken. And then from there I wrote a letter to Veronelli a few years later, telling him, look, I am a student of philosophy. And I really like wine. I like your crew theory because, of course, Veronelli was talking about the difference between one wine and another, determined by the position of the vineyard, so the crew. He mentioned that he too was a philosophy major when he realized I was a philosophy student. He suggested doing something positive and expressed his admiration for my letter, stating that he enjoyed it immensely. I am the editor of Wine and Spirits magazine. It's great to write about wine. Veronelli said it was incredible. Let's create some buzz now. The objective is to ignite excitement and captivate readers. In reality, the second query was precisely about this. That wine has a profound humanistic aspect. As I have spent more time with you throughout the years, I have found ample reason to believe this. Therefore, your studies in philosophy have indeed proved helpful, as they have greatly facilitated your entry into this realm. Not only that, but philosophy serves as a type of access key to numerous other domains as well. It does not merely educate you, it acquaints you with itself naturally, and it imparts a means of reasoning to you naturally. Furthermore, it is intertwined with history and politics, and it has seen numerous exceptional individuals who have played the roles of both philosophers and political or even literary figures. Just think of Jean-Paul Sartre. That definitely improves the situation. After that, however, you must then immerse yourself further because, to put it simply, wine is also a specialized field. Absolutely. I can assure you that some remarkable scholars and intellectuals have also made significant contributions to the wine industry. Take Giacomo Tachis, for instance, who was an avid collector of books. Tachis was arguably the most exceptional winemaker of his time, surpassing the achievements of many other renowned vineyards. Tragically, he passed away a few years ago. But he was a bibliophile, he was a collector, he was a scholar. He was not only... He donated everything anyway in the end. When he died anyway, they donated everything that was his archives. Of course, and I think they did, I don't know if it's the Juris, something like that. And there's the library, but it's an extraordinary library. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, let's say wine is true, it's also something to drink, but it's not just something to drink. It is something that makes you think, that brings you back to some... do you remember the movie Sideways? How could you not? And do you remember when the sommelier, the girl, says why she was into wine? That is a beautiful monologue about why one becomes a wine lover. And he becomes because wine is good for sure. Wine is a bottle of territory. It is the wine behind the people who make it. Community. Characters sometimes with extraordinary personalities. I think Sergio Manetti is one. I think Angelo Gaia. You think like they are characters? People above all, great professionals. Sergio was one of the clearers of Sangiovese in Chianti Classico. Absolutely. And like Fabrizio Bianchi was like John Dunkley of Ricine, like so many others. So many, it's true. So between a great wine, there is always a great man, a great woman. Think of Franco Biondisanti. Also in Montalcino. In Montalcino, there have been characters, and there are characters of great value. Giacomo Neri. I mean, there are Palmucci, all of those. Great ones. It's interesting to consider the existence of wine-producing dynasties. In Italy, wine underwent a qualitative transformation in the late 1960s and eventually solidified its characteristics in the 1980s. This prompts us to consider what wine was like in the 1980s and how it compares to today. From my perspective, as one of the oldest individuals who have witnessed and participated in this evolution, it is clear that significant changes have occurred. After Veronelli's influence, the wine industry experienced an impactful shift. At the same time as Cesare Pillon, who however is older than me, I started to be involved in wine, so Veronelli was the father of wine criticism, food and wine criticism in Italy. I became a student of Veronelli at a later time. The age difference between me and Veronelli was significant, as he was either 26 or 54 years old. However, in the 1980s, wine was predominantly characterized by its abundance, because a lot more was being produced, and a lot more was being drunk.
By the community.
The understanding is much higher. Today there is so much controversy about that we need to reduce wine consumption. Wine consumption has reduced itself. Just think that in the 1980s there was almost more than 70 liters per capita. Now it's down to 42. Production was significantly higher. To this day we continue to make 40 million hectoliters. Back then it was almost twice as much. So we are talking about a century ago. Then there weren't a number of things. The first controlled and guaranteed appellations of origin are really from the 1980s. But the first wine that came out with DOC was the Vino Nobile di Montepulciano in 83. Go figure. And Brunello in 85. DOCs are from 63. But the first DOC wines came out with the 66 vintage in 67. So, the production of bulk wine has significantly declined over time. Nowadays, it makes up less than half of the total production. However, if we look back at the wine industry in the 60s and 70s, wine producers were heavily reliant on bulk wine. Maybe they were just a fraction of their current size, potentially even smaller. How was that red shrimp born? Is there a red shrimp? The red shrimp, I had already done things in the wine world. For example, I had become a teacher at the courses of the Italian Sommelier Association. In the year 1983, he became an acclaimed wine tasting expert and a renowned lecturer on the subject. I was a bit of a kingpin of the Roman sommelieria. Stefano Bonilli had just left the Tasca Nostra program because he had started with the Manifesto. Then he had gone to do other things because Manifesto was making very little money. He had to make a living, poor guy. And he had gone on to do other things. And among other things, he had been a contributor to Tasca Nostra, which at that time was run by Tito Cortese, who was a journalist at that time. Then it happened that they did an analysis of Pomodoro's Passata, if I'm not mistaken, and a very famous Pomodoro's Passata, which came last, and these here took the publicity away from RAI and gave it to Mediaset, which was at that time there. And then of Imperium, the politicians of that time, I don't remember who was in charge of telecommunications at that time there, shut down the broadcasting of Tasca Nostra. And so Bonilli found himself out of a job. He went back to the Manifesto people, and especially Valentino Parlato, and told him, look, I wanted to do a consumption insert. And Valentino Parlato told him, do whatever you want as long as it doesn't cost a lira. And he set out to do the consumption insert and made a team. And in the team there was Carlin Petrini and there was Edoardo Raspelli. Then there was Cristina Barbagli, there were others, Loris Campetti, some from the Manifesto. He was missing a wine expert. And he said to Raspelli, but do you know anyone? How do I know? I know one, a good one, who collaborates with IC, collaborated with Veronelli. His name is Daniele Cernilli. And he lives in Rome, by the way. And he gave him the phone number of my mother's house. There were no cell phones. Again, these phones here, Exactly, and he and Bonilli phoned my mother. My mother is very chatty, still alive, there's 94 years old, and they chatted, and eventually he got Bonilli's number. And when I came home, at that time I was teaching. I was a middle school teacher of humanities, and he said, look, this gentleman called, where you have to call him back. I called him back, and there was born a great friendship, a great complicity that went on until 2008, more or less. What about the idea of the three glasses symbol? This is a question that all... So the reason was this: we had to do the wine guide. I had been very insistent because Veronelli was no longer doing the wine guide. He was doing Bolaffi, so there was no wine guide in Italy. And I told Bonilli and Carlo Petrini, who at that time had founded Arscigola, which was not yet Arscigola Slow Food. It was not yet slow food, it's from the 90s. In 87, there was Archigola, and we had a meeting in Bra with Petrini, Bonilli, and Gigi Piumati, who was Petrini's collaborator. Sure, who still works there. And I said, look, in my opinion, you have to do this. Since we were using cents on Gambero Rosso, I decided to create a guide with scores given in cents as well. This aligns with the practices of Wine Spectator and Parker, who predominantly use the same scoring system. However, Petrini held a differing opinion due to his dislike for American things, including this particular American stuff. As a result, a thought crossed my mind. I've always been in wine bar frequentations, right? Yes, Gocetto. Gocetto, for example, which is one of my... That's your point. Yes, I always say I'm a piece of immobilio, because I've been going since 80... Yes, because I've been going since 84, so figure. I've been going to the Gocetto. Well, then when you serve wine in a wine bar with one bottle, you make 6 servings, yes? Now, drinking a bottle alone is a bit much, isn't it? You drink with 2 people, and if the bottle runs out, how many glasses have you had? I drank an in between. You drank 3. Excuse me, 6.
Subtitles
You drank 3.
created by the
If the wine is
Amara.org
good, so you
community.
would finish the bottle, and you had drunk 3 glasses. 3 glasses. If the wine was good, but I mean, after a while you wanted to change, you drank 2. So it's good. No, yeah, whatever, I tried it, but it didn't really convince me. Then, if I put it in front of my nose and said, no, this just wasn't, it was 0. So that's how the story came to be. Wow, really incredible. To be honest, I didn't even realize it at the time. You know what? I actually wrote about it in my book, Memoir of a Taster. It was just something I had completely forgotten. Probably because I had already read it. I mean, I devoured the entire book and absolutely loved it. Of course, anyway, at that time you decide to build a guide, the first guide that was in the vineyards of Italy anyway. Do you take inspiration from something already existing, maybe coming from France, or do you ideas completely from scratch? In my opinion, I mean, I remember who I was inspired by. I was inspired like... Meanwhile, to the fact that on Gambero Rosso you were doing journalistic prose basically, so it wasn't simply a matter of tasting or organoleptically examining the wines, but you were telling a story for each of the producers. And yet the wine did. You were saying what the general characteristics were, but that wasn't the key thing, was it? The ones who had done this previously were Go and Mio, yes, and they had already been here. Go and Mio both for restaurants, which then was what inspired the Espresso Guide. Michelin was already there anyway. Michelin was already there, but Michelin didn't put any kind of commentary. At the time, it was simply a list of restaurants in the guide for a traveler, basically. For hotels. Yes, there were hotels and restaurants. So the Go and Mio was kind of the one that inspired me from, if you will, quote-unquote, literary point of view. Literary. Whereas for the score, it's clear, the 3 Michelin stars. Obvious. The 3 Michelin stars that became the 3 Micheri. That's right. With that reason there, because it was a more pop, more boyish reason. I was 31 at that time, so I was thinking like a 31-year-old boy. Of course. It wasn't that I wanted to put it down hard or show that who knows what we had come up with. Technically, we were probably a little clueless at that time, right? And if you take a closer look at the individuals who were involved, however, it should be noted that the initial versions of the Gamberoso guide were the ones all those individuals relied on, right? From San Giorgio to Giuliani, Andrea Gabrieli, to some extent, yes. More or less. At least in terms of evaluating wines, certainly. I mean, there were numerous people who followed that guide. Then Marco Sabellico entered the picture. However, I currently work with DoctorWine, not Gambarosso anymore. No, we initiated primarily because it allows for a complete focus on your career. Prior to joining DoctorWine, how do you perceive the state of Italian wine communication here? And what are the essential means for engaging with new wine enthusiasts, new tasters? But look, the new tasters approach themselves. The wine world and wine communication is a bit too self-referential, in my opinion. I believe that the gymnasium should not only be limited to those interested in wine tasting. We should continue the tradition of storytelling which has been a part of our culture since the Gambarosso era. Therefore, it would be unwise to dismiss the idea. When talking about wine, everyone has to understand what we are saying. One must not use common language. Yes, slang vines, I never liked it, frankly. No, bottle radio has never appealed to me. I want maybe it's also because I have a legacy as a middle school teacher, moreover. I communicate in a manner resembling that of a teacher at a middle school. Middle school teachers are some of the best teachers there are, because if you don't interest them, 12 to 14-year-olds tend to beat themselves up. That's right. And so, because they have the ore bones, the adrenaline,
Subtitles
it's
created by the
difficult
Amara
to
community.
them. So they have to compare themselves, figure out who they are, and so on. And so if you, however, interest them and show them that that thing there is not boring, eventually. So how do you communicate to the layman a world that is as multifaceted as wine is? Because precisely it's not just something to drink. You have to know about history, you have to know about geology, you have to know about skills, technical organoleptic terms, but you have to explain them. To a normal person, someone who's not in our industry, if you tell him fruity wine, he thinks it's sweet. Because fruit is sweet. True. You have to tell him, look, though fruity refers to the fruit aromas, not the fruit flavor, right? Fruit sense. And why does wine have fruit sense? Because it comes out of the grape, which is a fruit. It carries with it esters, flowers, terpenes, which may be the same ones that, for example, are in fruit or flowers, that's right. Linalool, that is Gewürztraminer, tastes pink because it has linalool in it, which is a terpene, which is also in fruits. Linalool also is pink. So stop saying these things here. And instead, the words turn peculiar, causing the wine to possess an unmistakable vibrancy, an intense richness that lingers and captivates. I concur. Before we take a step back in time, what do you regret about your beginnings and what do I envy about the future? Or first, a video contribution from a friend of yours. We were guests of a wine producer in Montalcino. Nice day. Around 15 individuals gather, enjoying food and beverages. We play ball, we destroy a rose garden, meanwhile it's getting dark. Dinner? It gets midnight, it gets 1 o'clock. 2 o'clock, at which point the whole troop decides to go to sleep.
But Daniele was not there, he was not to be found.
Where will he be? Where won't he be? We look around, nothing. At some point, the door of the house opens, Daniele pops out and goes, Because I prepared matriciana for you, we enjoy a late-night snack before going to bed. We indulged in the delicious matriciana at 2 o'clock in the morning. Made by Daniele. Very good, moreover. Tell who he is. This is the mythical Prompi. He is Silvano Prompicari, one of my best friends. He is a Bergamascan from over the hill, so from the mountains. He is a spectacular wine taster. He is one who? Yes, he is amazing. He is so tall. He is 2 meters tall. He has the big voice you saw. He changed his glasses. I almost didn't recognize him. And we did all kinds of things. That thing there happened from low houses. Gianfranco Soldera was there at the time. Then it took us. We broke his wife's rose garden because we organized a ball game in the rose garden.
Subtitles created by the Amar.org community.
So we made a mess. There were 16 of us, including 4 women. We drank in a whole day 50 bottles of Brunello di Montalcino. Once, when he was there, the presence of Gambeli indicated the arrival of the bad guy. You can only imagine what happened next. In total, about 30 people must have indulged in drinking throughout the day, leading to the situation I have previously displayed. As for regrets, what I lament is the fact that I was 30 years younger back then, whereas now I am 40. So that one regrets. Today I couldn't think of doing such a thing at all. I would leave them skinned, probably. Has the language of wine changed? It has a little bit. Let's say, though, that sommelier language has always been a determining thing. I have to say that Ais especially, but also Fissara, Onab, have done a job of popularizing wine that has been extraordinary. This is something that you have to give credit to great associations, because if there had not been that kind of action, of schooling, we would have been much further behind. And in my opinion, the language has been very much mediated by sommelier language. Furthermore, it possesses a technical nature. Onab is not reminiscent of something, but rather has a connotation of technicality and taste. Nevertheless, it is through these connections that wine knowledge has been conveyed to hundreds of thousands, even millions of individuals. I believe that at least one tasting course they have done well over 1 million people in Italy over all these years. It's 40 years. I believe there are even more than 1 million people who have done this. And think what it has meant from the point of view of widespread knowledge of wine, which is still a complex subject. Not very difficult, but complex. It needs a lot of knowledge and skills. You just think that we have 500 types of grapes in Italy. We have, I don't know how many hundreds of appellations of origin. That's right, every country has its own wine. And in short, to know everyone's wine is almost impossible. We then have this huge biodiversity. Absolutely. So this is an important thing. And let it be said, right? Various broadcasts and so on. However, wine is one of the most transparent. Furthermore, we should know the chemical, or rather the least, that we can acquire. You also think, when it comes to homologation, wines are all... Meanwhile, think that in Italy, there are 600,000 hectares of vineyards. That means 6,000 square kilometers. If we put them all together, it would be a region bigger than Liguria, you think, right? And we have about 250, almost 300,000 producers, that is, producers of grapes that then become wine. So that means the average property is 2 hectares. 2 hectares is something. You can imagine, right? I mean, who can homogenize such parcel production? Indeed, it is true that there exist some prominent producers. Nevertheless, not a single prominent Italian producer ranks in the top 10 worldwide. Despite our status as the largest producers globally, etc., this distinction belongs to France. Yes, we produce a considerable amount of wine from small-scale farms. Precisely. And the first company, the biggest company there is, which is Gruppo Italiano Vini in Italy, is a company made up of so many companies. It is not a single company. And we are talking about that. That is, we have incredible parcelization. And this is like to communicate it, and it's not the easiest thing in the world. No, absolutely not. 2 minutes of quick questions. The wine that has impressed you the most exists to date? Is there one you say this so far? I hope there will be. No, the one that to date has impressed you. To date. To date there are many. In particular? No, there is not one in particular. However, I love certain wines. I love certain Baroli from Giacosa, for example. I love Di Bruno Giacosa, Di Bruna today. I love Sassicaia, what they say is a great wine. I love some French, both from Burgundy, from Bordeaux, definitely. One of my favorite producers is Armand Rousseau. I mean, Eric Rousseau, who is the grandson of Armand Rousseau, who makes fantastic wines, which I used to be able to even buy myself. Not anymore, because they cost an eye of the press. Spun. Yes. A geographical area with very high potential that to date has not yet broken through. I'm not talking about Italy, but that you think in the future may have something to tell. But look, It hasn't really broken through, but something has, I'm thinking of Irpinia, for example. So you're staying in Italy, so they stay in Italy. Then yes, there are areas, for example, in New Zealand, there is an area where they produce an extraordinary black pine. It's Central Otago, in the South Island of New Zealand. Then there are so many. In Italy, I would say Irpinia, the central area of Sardinia, the Mandrolisai area, which nobody knows about, where they make incredible wines. Mostly bulk still. Maybe they are the greatest bulk wines I've ever tasted. Neonelia also. Think, places right in the center of Sardinia. Imagine, on the border between the province of Oristano and Nuovo. The last question that closes our interview is, was there a mentor for Daniele Cernilli? Yes, Veronelli was undoubtedly the one. And alongside him were many friends, including Bonilli, who unfortunately is no longer with us. I also had the pleasure of sharing a long-lasting friendship with Carlo Petrini and Gigi Piumati. Another notable figure was Silvano Prompicci, a rare gem who served as a sales representative in Rome and possessed an extensive knowledge of wine. He imparted countless insights to us. However, I must acknowledge my very first sommelier teacher, who hailed from Casal Pusterlengo. He held the 12th card of the Sommelier Association and was based in Rome. Angelo Bruschi was his name, and he literally taught me the art of opening a bottle of wine with a professional corkscrew. We have come to understand, beyond doubts, just as Daniele has today, that there are numerous interviews conducted on various specific topics. However, what I truly yearned for was to precisely comprehend the journey that led us here. One important fact distinguishes us. As writers who delve into the realm of wine, we must emphasize that we did not create penicillin. That, without a doubt, is a crucial notion. It remains an open matter. In conclusion, we share an enjoyable experience with producers who hold expertise in their craft. In summary, let's come down from the pear tree. Sometimes there is someone who stays too high, too much up. But before they leave you, behind you is a person who brought you a wine. You have to tell me if you like that wine. Take it, it's behind you. Ah. Here, I want to know if you like it. Yes, it's nice and saline, it makes you salivate, you know? A wine with acidity makes you salivate, tannin inhibits salivation. White wine makes you salivate because it has acidity and it doesn't normally have tannin. Do you still like it as a wine? Yes, it is a good wine. It is a fresh, pleasant wine. With the one you stay with? I don't know if that's what I think, since Partesa is in Partesa's portfolio. Probably. Look, it could be a surprising wine from the south, or a wine from like a classic northeast area. It could be either of those things. It is the little brother of the one you awarded. It is the little brother of the one I awarded. This year. This year, so what could it be? It is not aromatic, so it is neither Sauvignon.
Subtitles created by the
Is it a
community.
Sauvignon? It's Montoto's Gesaya. Ah, that's it. But you see though, it's not for the little brother because it expresses less the theoreticalness of Sauvignon. This one here is the one that goes, probably, it feels a little bit more, it's very cold. It's cold. We took it out of the refrigerator now. This is a Riccardo Lepri area. That's right, good. So it's an area that's in Maremma. It's a strange thing. It's unbelievable, but it's windy. I know where it is because on the Campigliola it's between, what's it called? It's between Montalto di Castro and Manciano, right?
Subtitles created by the Amar.org
Geography,
community.
writing a book is everything. And look, when I know that road because I used to go to Manciano and to Montemerano to visit my friend Eric Banti many years ago. And so that road, I must have done it 100 times. Reminded me of when I went to the Central Coast in California to see John Clendenin, who was a California producer, but not from Napa Valley, from the area just north, 200 kilometers north of Los Angeles. And there's the Central Coast, which is a desert area, almost desert. And it reminded me damn well of that area there. That area there reminded me damn well of it. It's a very windy thing, quite barren, and therefore with big temperature fluctuations because the Sauvignon from this, I got to know it through you. So, just imagine, I had your company handle it with utmost care and I didn't take a single penny of commission. Rest assured, I can guarantee you this with absolute certainty. In our world, there are also actions that are carried out purely out of passion. That's absolute truth. Thank you, Daniele. It was an incredible conversation. We truly appreciate everyone joining us and look forward to seeing you again at the next Fulgor Wine Theater, hosted by Partesa for Wine.